Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vanguard Srinath Chegulapalli.
Thank you, and good morning. So first off, I want to say thank you to the PACT team. Dean and team has done a phenomenal job year over year organizing this event, so thank you, Dean. It is my pleasure to introduce the next topic. It's about AI. So we just heard about how AI is being used to, or has the potential to disrupt, and every industry, not just one. We want to hear about how AI is being used across enterprises and startups in creating services that will not only disrupt the industries, but also provide differentiated services. So it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator for this panel, Chris Wilhelm, who is the Vice President of Business Consulting for EPAM Systems, where he's responsible for advising clients on how to apply leading technologies. So please welcome Chris.
And the panel. And the panel. Thanks, Srinath. Well, thanks, Srinath, and welcome, Phorum. We have a great panel here today to talk about the promise of AI, which is obviously a big topic for all of us. So I'm going to do quick introductions. First, I'll do Kevin Justice. He's Principal and Head of Enterprise Advice at Vanguard. He and his team have already been leveraging AI to advance their capabilities to provide advice to investors across the globe. So welcome, Kevin. Second, we have Mike Tarazzi, CIO and SVP of IRobot, where he designs, builds, and markets robots, including the Roomba, for the consumer market and smart home. Yes. Then we have Matthias Klein, President and CEO of Cognition. It's a local company who's developed the world's first enterprise-wide, hardware-agnostic, smart property system. So we have a two-part format today for you guys. First, we're going to do a series of lightning talks. So each of these folks will address how they're thinking about AI in their companies, how they're deploying it. Then we'll come back for a moderated Q&A by yours truly, and off we go. So with that, I'll kick it off to Kevin for the first lightning talk.
Is that easiest?
Yeah,
Stand up here?
sit,
All right.
Stand, whatever you like.
So thank you for being here. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here because last time I was at Sugar House, I think the ballroom was that direction, but Randy Houser was on stage. And if you're a country music fan like I am, it was the time of my life. So I was seated about right there in the second row on the aisle, this close to Randy Houser. The bad news for all of you is I am not Randy Houser. I dabble in the guitar and singing, but will not be putting on that kind of show. The reason I wanted to reference that, though, was one of my favorite songs that he sings, and he opened with that night, is a song called No Stone Unturned. And I think it applies to some of the experiences we're having with our venture into machine learning and artificial intelligence. And a set of lyrics that I love are, I'm drawn to the chaos and the wind, can't help but take a look now and then, and one day I'll probably settle down, but there's still a whole lot of lost to be found. No stone unturned, no turn unstoned. I think it's appropriate for our journey in artificial intelligence and machine learning because it conveys a sense of unknown, of uncertainty, and of possibility, but a lot that we haven't found yet. So in our own journey at Vanguard, a few things. So one, to note from my background, what I'll speak to is the application of machine learning and AI in advice. Our team is responsible for the technology and methodology driving our advice capabilities at Vanguard. And we formed a team about 2 years ago to be dedicated to advice specifically. And we'll get into probably some discussions around being in an enterprise situation and not. But in the enterprise, we don't have a single AI ML team to go to. We have a few discrete teams working on discrete problems. So far, that's working well for us. But in advice specifically, what we're finding is there are three kinds of applications. The first is fairly obvious. It's automation. We found that there are things that people were doing that machines can do faster, cheaper, better. I don't think we have competitive advantage there. I think we all are finding that. The first there might have competitive advantage for 6 months, but it's not rocket science there. We do employ a few rocket scientists, but that's not what they're doing. We think about the second stage as being personalization. I think we just heard about some of that. The idea that we can personalize a user experience to you. We hear a lot today around client experience, user experience. How important it is to know your client and know what they need. That was the reference to, I'm bald, but do I need a baldness cure or do I need razor blades? If we can get that personalization right, not only do we make the user experience better, but we can also deliver it faster, cheaper, better. There's a lot of emphasis going in right now to that personalization. A struggle most of us have, though, is the data. We have a lot of data on millions of investors, but we have a relatively finite set of data. It turns out we're not sure whether all of that data is the right data to identify and personalize the experience for them. That's really difficult for us right now. We're training many models to try to understand that, but we're not at a point where we're ready to deploy most of them because we're just not confident that they're going to get the razor blades versus the baldness cure example right. And they have to, because it's really, really bad. You don't get a second chance at getting that wrong, especially with your investments. Right? The word trust comes up time and time again. I hope Vanguard is a trusted brand. And to retain that trust, we have to meet the client where they are. We don't get a second chance to do that. The third step then for our journey will really be around the holistic advice that AI could one day deliver. But there are a couple of struggles for us there. The first is it's both cognitively challenging. There are a lot of moving pieces that a human is capable of processing, that it's very, very difficult to have the data and training for us to do right now. It's also relational. It's very difficult for us to teach the empathy. People make a lot of irrational decisions with their investments and their money. It's really difficult to train the machines right now to understand the irrational, to recognize the irrational, and to respond in a similarly irrational way to get the person to eventually get to the rational answer, right? There's a whole lot of irrationality. Machine learning is really good at rational. It's not nearly as good at the irrational. But you need the irrational empathy to get to the rational outcome in advice. The other thing we're struggling with, candidly, is regulation. And that's not to say bad regulators, they can't keep up. They can, they are, they want to. But it's really difficult right now to secure, let's make a recommendation, let's move someone's entire nest egg from A to B and not be able to directly demonstrate why we did that. That's really difficult. Or to say in an annual audit, you recommended person with 25 characteristics go into A. And then 6 months later, you recommended somebody with the exact same 25 characteristics go into B. Why? They don't right now accept because the model got better. It learned B was a better answer. Well, then they'd say, well, A was the wrong answer. Well, no. A was the best answer we could come up with 6 months ago. But B is the best answer we can come up with now. That doesn't really satisfy the regulatory regime within which we operate. So we have to find a way that as the models get smarter, we can continue to deliver those same results back to the investors and bring the regulatory regimes along with how we do that, why we do that, and how investors benefit. We do believe investors will benefit from these advances. The automation is lowering price, creating access to more products for more people. The personalization is giving them a better experience and helping them trust what's going on. The holistic advice delivery, though, can revolutionize access to an advisor and the type of advice we can deliver. We do think investors will be better off when we can do it, but that is a very long pole in the tent. Again, automation is very clear, very obvious ROI, and easy to approve with a regulator. That cognitive, empathetic, irrational, rational being of AI and machine learning that we hope to hit one day, very difficult to commit to now, very difficult to get the data for, and very difficult to prove to a regulator that it's right. So in conclusion, I know we're going to get back to the panel and happy to answer some questions there, but I want to leave you with one of the benefits that an enterprise has is that it has mass amounts of data, mass amounts of clients that it can work with to train models on. It's a great petri dish for that. The downside is we also have information security departments who don't like this stuff generally. We also have procurement and vendor management departments who generally don't like approving stuff as fast as we need them to. And we have data control teams who don't like us to play with data as much as we like to play with it. The good and the bad come together, but our hope is we can leverage all of that good to really drive the industry and have change in our financial services industry to improve outcomes for investors. Thank you.
Mike?
I'll probably just sit. This couch is actually pretty comfortable. You guys are okay.
We'll gather around.
Yeah. I'll probably just talk a little bit about it. I'll tell a little story. IRobot is a really interesting place, and it's gone through a couple chapters, and it directly relates to what we're talking about today with AI and also robotics. You know, we are a team that really doesn't fear robots. You know, I go to work, robots are zipping up and around the halls every day. It's actually kind of cool. But as the company evolved with the technology as well, it's gone through a series of chapters that demonstrate what we're talking about today. So the first 10 years of the company's existence, it was founded in 1990, Colin, our CEO, who was a peer of Rodney Brooks, mentioned before, likes to joke that we were the greatest robotics demonstration company in the world, which is essentially his tongue-in-cheek way of saying he didn't make any money. But they worked with DARPA. They got a rover up on Mars. And then sort of evolved into this second chapter of working with the military, building robots specifically for IED bomb disposal. And as we think about human-robot relationship there, that the robots were going in and doing a very dangerous job and giving the human space to think and help interact with it. So it was essentially a glorified remote control. And then as it evolved from there, there was a comment that, hey, you know, when is Rosie coming? You know, I always see it in the Jetsons. When do I get Rosie? And that actually was almost the birth of Roomba. And if you think about Roomba, Roomba's been around for over 15 years now, and it started as this blind bumper, and today it actually sees and understands. So it's integrated with Google, it's integrated with Alexa, and you could say, hey, go clean the kitchen. It'll know where the kitchen is. If you pick the robot up and put it in the living room, it'll understand where the living room is. And with that is a level of intelligence that the robot now actually has on board and can understand its environment. And some of what we're doing too is ensuring that not only does the robot understand the environment, but we're really focused, and I think this is important too, around experience. So how to apply AI, how to apply intelligence, you really need to backcast from what experiences are you looking to deliver. And as we're looking at this right now, if you look at something like Roomba, which actually almost seems pedantic because we're basically saying just focusing on clean floors, the point is that you can solve some really basic things as we build towards this future. Because it wasn't that long ago that actually Amazon was selling books, Google was a search engine, and I would say 15 years ago, I don't know that we fully would imagine where we are today. So as we start thinking through these problems, and we just start incrementally gaining and applying these technologies to specific human needs, I think we'll start to find and understand the way and around how to apply them ethically, how to ensure that we have privacy, how to ensure we have security, and then ultimately, how do we ensure that we improve our experiences? Because that's really what this is about. So.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here. Humbled to be on the panel with these great speakers here. I'm Matthias Klein. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cognition. We've created an artificial intelligence for smart property. We had a vision about a year and a half ago that there was an opportunity to combine machines that can think with machines that can act, really taking AI and the Internet of Things and putting them together. And when you think about that idea, it's profound in terms of how broad of an impact that it can have. There's this saying out there that AI is the new electricity, and I think it exactly captures what it is. No company's got a monopoly on electricity, right? There are so many different places where it's going to be applied, and it's going to transform all kinds of stuff. But the other thing about AI, which I think we realized, was that it's complicated. Just saying the AI, what does that even mean? I mean, it's so varied and so many different places where it can be applied. It's like saying the human intelligence. What does that even mean? I mean, there's so many different kinds of people with different ideas, different cultures, different skills, and that's great, right? In that diversity, we have so much synergy and opportunity, and I view AI very much the same way. And so if you think about all of the different use cases where AI can be applied, how do big companies, how does the enterprise put that to work? How do they operationalize that? What's the operating system for AI? Well, good luck, right? I mean, you can hire some really great people from management consulting companies, Deloitte, Accenture. They'll build you whatever you want. Won't be cheap, and it'll be great. But if you're a company, you want a product that runs off the shelf, that's commercially supported, that you can implement the various AI jobs or automations that you're interested in, how do you do that? So we set out to build a software platform. We call ourselves the world's first hardware agnostic smart property system because we believe there's so many different devices, cameras, sensors, smart devices, Roombas, Alexas, and we hope and we believe there's going to be an explosion of these sorts of intelligent devices, but we can't deal with all that complexity. Humans can't deal with all that complexity. So we need a system that can simplify, that can interoperate, that can operationalize AI, and that's what we've built. And our vision really is about creating a world that's smarter and more secure. There's a lot of hysteria, hype, fear, uncertainty, doubt, all that about AI. Everyone's seen, the Terminator. Everyone's seen Darth Vader merging with the robot and being this evil force. And, I think it just plays to, natural human fears for survival and for success and for growth. But the reality is AI is an incredibly powerful utility that is going to transform life, in my view, for the better. And the way that that happens is through leadership, through ideas that are creating generative and new constructive value, not in fear-mongering, not in applying tools for destructive purposes or evil purposes. And so, we are creating a platform to apply AI to make life simpler, to make life better, to take the burden of rote, monotonous tasks off of humans. I'll give you a good example of one of the things that we do. We ingest video from your existing surveillance cameras, and we task the AI, watch this camera, watch this footage, and when you see this thing, take this predefined action. That could be, hey, when you see an unauthorized person, alert security. It could be, hey, when Matthias comes to the office, turn on the light in his office. Whatever it may be, but the AI is in service of the humans, and it's doing things behind the scenes that, frankly, humans don't have to do or even necessarily want to do and certainly aren't wired to do. I mean, how many times have you said to your kids, turn off the lights, right, when they're somewhere else in the house? I do that all the time, and it's an impossible task. They don't learn. I'd like the light to turn itself off when my kids are downstairs. I'd like my building to be looking out for my well-being. I'd like it to be more secure, more energy efficient, better maintained, all by having the AI and these smart devices working on my behalf. And so that's our view. AI is a life enabler. AI can make the world smarter and more secure, and that's exactly what we're setting out to do to help people, to help large enterprises operationalize that and make that happen.
All right. So guys, to start off the Q&A, I'm going to springboard Matthias off of something you said, and we talked, I think, last week a little bit about this notion that AI is an enabler. It's a utility belt, and I think, for some of the people in the audience, they're probably thinking, how do I connect AI to my business? How do I specifically do that? The possibilities are limitless. How do you channel it into specific product or business strategy that actually make money? I think the audience would like to hear a little bit about that. I don't know who wants to start, but
well, let me just wrap up on my last piece, because I'll talk about specifically one of the tasks that I believe humans aren't wired for, that we should just hand over to the AI, and that's watching video feeds. I mean, imagine if you're sitting in front of a bank of cameras, having to look at 10, 20, 30, 50 cameras, and watch out for that needle in the haystack moment when something bad is happening. That is an impossible task to give a human being. I mean, I personally would zone out within 10 minutes of looking at one camera, let alone 5 or 10. So if we put the AI into service for us, doing things that we're not wired for or built for, I think that's a synergy for everyone. It frees up the human to go do things that they're better at and allows the AI to kind of sift through all that noise and find the signal.
Sure. Mike,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
You hit the nail on the head, and I think as we look at these really basic tasks and having AI and or robotics take over them, it just makes sense. And using Roomba as an example, I don't know anybody that enjoys vacuuming. Yeah, anybody. And at the same time, as you look at the evolution of this device and the intelligence associated with it, as it continues to grow and increase in capability, why would you push the machine around when the machine could go by itself? You're essentially freeing yourself up to do something else.
Yeah.
And then as we think, to directly answer the question, as we think about how to apply these capabilities, it always comes back to what does that consumer need? What does that human need, and how can we build against it? And we really start small at the beginning. And as we start to think through this, we have a saying that it doesn't count unless it's real. We have a lot of great ideas. We have a lot of people that are tons smarter than I am at IRobot. But unless we actually make something real, it doesn't really count. So as we're looking at, as an example, one of the cool things about the experience of the robot, you could unpackage it, push the button, it says clean, and that's exactly what happens. And as we were starting to apply some artificial intelligence to the capability, we realized that people actually are happier when this thing is scheduled. So as people were creating patterns, we're actually now pushing suggestions back to the consumer saying, hey, we noticed that you happen to run your cleaning on this day at this time on a regular basis. Would you like us to set a schedule and automate it for you? And more often than not, people opt in. So it's a really small example, but it shows how you can build towards that and then be in service of humans.
And I guess, Kevin, for you, it's a little bit different. You've got what I'd call potentially AI native companies here, and Vanguard's a more traditional enterprise. Talk about how that might be different within your company.
Yeah, the application is probably different, but I think the same idea of the user experience is
The thinking is the same.
The thinking is the same. The user experience and creating value for the client is the value of AI. That's where you're going to monetize it. That's where the value creation comes from, is the user has to have a better experience. They have to trust you more. They have to improve their outcome in some way. One example that we're working through, not an application for any Vanguard clients out there yet. If you haven't gotten the notification, you haven't missed it yet. But if we notice that someone was, anytime the Dow drops more than 1% in a given day, they pick up the phone and they call us to check on the status of their portfolio. Or they log into their account and go to their holdings to check on the status of their portfolio. Could we at 4:01 send them a text notification that says, your portfolio is in good shape, we checked on the rebalancing, no need, you're still in tolerance, don't worry about it. We would have saved that user having to call us. We would have saved that user having to log in. We think they would appreciate that time savings, that energy. We also probably saved money if they called in from the person who had to take that phone call and tell them, stay the course, life is good.
Yeah.
But can we meet the user where they are and give them what they want when they want? That predictive ability to know what they want enables us to give them better quality service.
Yeah. Guys, where does experimentation fit into, again, the connection of AI to true business outcomes, whether it's a product, an experience, whatever the case is? Where does experimentation fit in that milieu? And I guess, again, we've got some diversity here in terms of the companies, so I'd love to hear about how you guys experiment with the AI to push the boundaries for your companies.
Yeah, sure.
Mike, we'll start.
It's core to who we are. So for us, we actually start with the experimentation. And the nice thing about this and putting together A/B tests and then separating through a microservice architecture the capability for, for product owners to start to drive this in addition with the technologists, that we always start with the consumer and the product owner. But we don't expect them to come up with all the ideas. And a lot of time our technology team will come forth and say, hey, have we thought about this? Can we try this? And we say, great, let's actually put it in our next sprint and we'll run it in and see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's how we come up with a lot of our ideas.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
I mean, our platform is built for experimentation by the customer, right? I mean, again, in my opening comments, I talked about the idea that AI is like electricity. Well, I could come to you and say, here's an electrical device and just sell you that. Here's a toaster, and I'd be a toaster company. But what we're doing is we're building infrastructure that companies can apply to operationalize AI. And so it allows them to experiment and then scale up if the experiment works, and to manage all these diverse operations. I think to us it's inherent in the way we think about operationalizing AI, because we don't know, we have to test things, we have to see how accurate things are in different contexts, but you need to have a toolkit to enable that to happen in a seamless way.
Yeah, I think similarly, so the song lyrics I shared, but no stone unturned, is kind of our approach, that we assume we're going to fail an awful lot before we get there. So we've embraced it. We have to experiment, and the failures.
But you're also regulated, so you've got to think about that.
Well, that's the flip side of it, is we have to be very careful with how we experiment. So we are stewards of other people's capital. We have a fiduciary duty to them. We have regulators watching us every moment of every day. Experimentation is mostly internal, not external. We have to prove things internally before we can take them to market.
Yeah. Let's flip the coin a little bit. We talked a little bit about strategy. Let's think about capabilities and kind of building the internal capabilities to actually do some of the things we've talked about. So you think about investments in AI. For each of your companies, what are the building blocks? What are the capabilities that have to be in place to actually create the Roomba that's smart and doesn't hit into the love seat 30 times in a row? Right. What are those core capabilities that again, our audience might be interested to hear about that need to be built to make this stuff happen?
But my comment on that is real simple, and I think this was already said, but it starts with the need that the human has, and how can we solve for making life better for the human. Yeah. And from there, then you can look at which technical component you want to apply to that solution. Machine learning, AI, IoT, blockchain, buzzword galore. Right. That's all just componentry for creating the solution. So I think if you start with the technology, you're already backwards. You're cart before the horse. Yeah. If you look at what are the tasks that our workforce is focusing on day to day, which tasks are rote, monotonous, we could free our humans from those so they can go do higher value things. I personally am not fearful of AI. I don't think AI is going to do mass job elimination. There may be job transformation for sure, but look, think about the long-distance telephone switch operators we used to have. They used to take cables from one switch and plug it into another one. There are a lot of people doing that job. They're all gone. Yeah. I don't think anyone's crying over that, right? Because that's a tough job to do day in and day out, switching, and a computer does that better. Now those folks have other jobs doing things, frankly, that are probably higher value for the world.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, without reiterating what he said, I'll just add some additional color to it as well. A nice way for organizations to start down this journey that is somewhat technology and user-centric really is just to focus on data science. And so with data science, you could start at the base level around analytics before you get to predictive capabilities, machine learning, and AI. But the nice thing about doing something like that is, even thinking of the term data science, you're starting with hypotheses. And usually those are business-generated hypotheses that are focused coming from the front end of the business. And then you start to get a deeper understanding. You start to do some data exploration. And then that starts to yield that, oh, wait a minute, this means this. Oh, we can do this. Or wait a minute, we realize we can predict this. And then before you know it, then you're actually doing AI.
Yeah.
I would say, some ingredients for us, they need a problem and a mission that's fairly noble. You need talent, and you need data. And then you need capital and time. And you need the noble mission to get the capital and time, and to buy you all the failings and a pass through all the failings. Yeah. Because it has to be a meaty enough problem that people are willing to endure 10 failures before they get to the 11th success.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Mike, you touched on this notion of the intersection between IT and the business. And talking to Peter Coffey at breakfast before the session, and we had a good discussion about what that looks like. And the historical chasm between IT and the business is really not there anymore. Yeah. Maybe talk a little bit about how you guys have bridged that gap, because again, to your point, it's a key enabler to making all this stuff really happen.
Yeah. So I know when I started at IRobot, I was hired really to be a traditional CIO. There was a lot of work that needed in that space, and we were growing rapidly, and it was a lot about growth and scale, and we had to build these capabilities in to enable the business to be able to do that. But the neat thing about iRobot is that there is this level of experimentation, and we were just bringing ideas to the forefront. And we had a lot of success in the traditional space where we earned the right to be able to have those conversations. And from there, it was even, the IT group was the one that suggested IoT back within the product lifecycle component. Back then, it was actually called M2M, before it was even IoT. And then we've just sort of continued from there. Now we're running DevOps, we're running the cloud, the consumer cloud. We've built this data platform. We're building microservice capabilities. And
but it's not a sprint, to your point. It's a journey.
It's a
right?
journey.
It's a journey.
You have to be, as a technologist, a business person.
Yeah.
If you're not a business person and you're a pure technologist, then you're kind of stuck. You're a hammer and everything's a nail. Yeah. That you have to start with, what is the consumer in my business? What does the consumer want? And then how can we help solve that? Or how can we help show them things that they didn't even realize that they wanted, and that they would find of value?
Right. Any other thoughts to share?
Yeah, my own personal experience, I'm new to technology. I grew up on the investment side of the house, an investment background. My prior job was running our institutional asset management business, nowhere near IT.
You know, CAPM, not code.
Yeah, exactly. Much more familiar with it, much more comfortable with it. For us, though, that was really important. And as we put together the team focused on advice, including the AI machine learning component, I don't have the same boundaries and the same views of what is and is not possible that have been set by 20 years of being told no or being told this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
And for us, it's been really important to really mix our technologists and our business people and have our methodology team with investment backgrounds, our business leads, and our technology folks co-located, collaborating on one floor of one building, really tight space, because we get all those perspectives together, and they're learning to appreciate the value the other has and the experience the other has.
That's awesome. Do you want to share something?
Well, I was just going to say, to me, I mean, the distinction with IT business, if you're a technology company, is an artificial one in a lot of ways. But I do think that at the end of the day, it starts with the need, then it turns into kind of, what tools and techniques and how we're going to build this, which is where the technology comes in. But I'll give you just a sneak peek of where I think a startup has a competitive advantage over the big guys, right? I was in a garage.com startup, and then we sold it to a Fortune 5 company. And so I've seen the big organizations, how they operate. I've seen the little organizations, how they operate. What I could tell you is we compress product management and development into a few people, whereas we don't have all these layers and meetings and so we can move much faster because we go from the need to the solution literally, instantly almost. And so our CTO, Jim Carroll, who was the chief architect at Traffic.com, which sold to Nokia, and was also the chief architect of ColdLight, which sold to PTC. I went down and sat down with him and said, look, here's what we need. We need a solution for tracking people, for people flow. I think we use machine learning this way. And he goes, oh, it can't be done, right? He then goes home, comes in the next day, and he goes, I got it. What? He has this calculus equation. It's like 5 lines long, and he goes, this is how we do it. And my answer was, yep, that's it, go do it. Because he knows things I don't know, but you bridge those knowledge silos pretty quickly when you go from need to how, and you kind of find that synergy.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Kind of springboarding again on this notion of capabilities, I've read studies that say 2/3 of AI decision makers struggle with AI talent. So it's easy to say, hey, we can build all this stuff up, but there's a lot of competition for talent out there. Just wondering, how do you guys think about that? How have you solved that problem for your own companies? Again, as you all have AI as a centerpiece of what you're trying to do and what's next.
Well, look, from my perspective as a startup, I'll tell you, I think this is really one of the most exciting opportunities that is in front of us as a country, as a world, as we look at commercializing these opportunities, because it's so decentralized now. Used to be, right, Silicon Valley, if you weren't there, forget about it, you're off the reservation. But I think now what you're seeing with, YouTube stars, you're seeing companies popping up all over the world doing things. Knowledge is available through the internet. The cutting edge of AI, there's nobody that has a monopoly on it because the research papers in the institutions are being published online.
You hit Git.
So, yeah, exactly. You go to GitHub and you see the code. People can learn, right? That kind of lifelong learning, the curiosity. I think if you can hire for the talent that wants to figure it out, you're going to have a competitive advantage because the talent is not there. There's a negative employment rate in AI. So good luck hiring those people. You got to figure out how to build those people.
Who's curious, who wants to learn, who wants to push the boundaries. Yep.
Yeah, no, it's probably one of our biggest challenges, to be honest with you. We're based just outside of Boston, and we also have an office in Pasadena, California. IRobot's not a massive company. There's 1,100 people worldwide, so it's relatively small. But we're competing against the Facebooks and Googles and the Amazons of the world in terms of for that talent. So for us, it's how much can we create a culture where people enjoy coming and building something towards it. And the other thing about that we find is that we call ourselves mission-driven builders because we believe very strongly in the mission, and this is as we're pulling talent and finding what resonates the most, and it certainly does for myself as well, is when I was first recruited to join IRobot, my response was, I don't want to work for a vacuum cleaning company. There's nothing about that. That sounds cool or sexy. But I was just dead wrong. There was 3 divisions at the time. We had the defense and security, telepresence, which was essentially telemedicine, and then the home division. And the thread that runs through them all is autonomy and trying to actually make the world a better place. In the defense and security, we're literally saving people's lives.
Yeah.
On the telepresence side, we're bringing medical specialists where they didn't exist physically. And on the home side, where I was wrong, was that what we're trying to do is to help build an automated household where elderly people can live with dignity in place, disabled people live with dignity in place, and healthy people spend more time with your kids, et cetera. And that mission resonates very strongly with most people. And so bringing people in and then giving them some level of autonomy, saying, can you solve this?
It's an unexpected response, quite honestly. It's an unexpected response, but kind of your point is having something that people can gravitate towards and really latch onto in terms of a mission that that touches their heart as opposed to their head. It's kind of counterintuitive.
It is very human-oriented.
Yeah.
So as we start to think through robots, AI, and humans, it really all comes back to what is the human need and what are we trying to drive. And then if we have that capability, can we have some positive impact on the world?
Any thoughts, Kevin?
Yeah, I'd share. From the external recruiting, we built many members of our team hired externally over the last 2 years. They want a cool problem, and they want to know they have autonomy to be free of the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest threats when they talk to the Facebooks and Googles and Amazons. They're just worried about, do I have to do it your way? And if you give them a cool problem with autonomy, that's intriguing.
Coders want to code, learn the latest code, do the coolest things, stay at the front edge.
Exactly. And then the internal, I think companies have to be willing to invest very heavily.
Yeah.
If we try to recruit these people, they can cost 2, 3, 4x an internal developer rate. And are you willing to spend that money on your internal developers to bring them there?
Yeah.
And we're committing aggressively to bringing a lot of internal folks along so that we have many more people, self-sustaining AI team.
So Kevin, you mentioned this notion of investment, and the premise of this discussion was where do you invest, how do you invest? So maybe let's talk a little bit about that. How do you define, justify, position investments, particularly to leadership that might not be as familiar with AI, or it could be a little bit vague and nebulous? I know you might not have a problem, Matthias, but anyway, how do you guys justify investments to boards, to leadership within your companies?
Well, we all have a boss, right? I mean, even I've got investors that I get to answer to too. Where am I spending their money, and how are we going to get a return? I think no matter whether you're big or small, you're still accountable. And I think at the end of the day, what we look at is where we can do something that's meaningful, that moves the needle in taking the burden off of humans, and can we solve it using AI and IoT? And if our view is the answer is yes, and there's a wide application for it in the enterprise, then we're going to go after it. I mean, we see a plethora of automation opportunities, applying AI to make life better, more secure, more energy efficient. And it doesn't take a lot, to make the case.
Yep.
Because AI, the opportunities are astounding in terms of the breadth and the scope of them. People say, well, who are your competitors? Who cares? There's so many opportunities. There could be lots of competitors, because when it was like electricity was invented, think about all the devices that were invented after that. I mean, no one has a monopoly on that.
Yeah. It's for us, we almost have two different tracks in that space. That how much can we put on the device, which has a COGS effects to it. So we're a consumer product. It actually needs to be affordable. So as we start to think through that always factors into our equation, because affordability, and we actually look at affordability as accessibility to make sure people have the access to a product like this. So that tends to play into some of our thinking. On the cloud and just pure AI side, it's more about time. How much time and what are the training models available, or do we need to build the training models? And then we run all of those through this product ownership. And we're actually making decisions based on what does the consumer need and does it match, and then how do we rank it from there?
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, I take a portfolio management approach to it. But going back to the three kind of themes I mentioned, efficient frontier, the three themes I mentioned in my remarks, I view the automation and scaling and efficiency productivity gains we get from the automation as then paying for the personalization, R&D, and the kind of holistic advice, eventually one day R&D. So I don't expect those to pay right now. But I think the program itself needs to, at the very least, break even or give a minor return. And so the automation of AI is paying for that.
Yeah. So when we spoke last week, we did touch on governance a little bit. And again, I think we all see the promise in AI. But I read a really interesting quote from Microsoft's EVP of AI and research. He recently said, this is a quote, "We need to engineer responsibility into the very fabric of AI." I thought that was kind of interesting. I'd just like to hear from you guys. Does that resonate? What does it mean to you guys? because I thought that was pretty provocative. But the interpretation, obviously, is where the rubber meets the road. Right. Love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, I'm sure it was, said with all the right intention, but to me, it's a platitude in a lot of ways because, AI is just not one thing, and putting AI into the service of humans. I mean, that's what we should be focusing on. Our company has a mission. We want to make the world smarter and more secure. Everything we do is informed by that mission. Everything we go build is based on that mission. And let's be honest, every product that was ever created by a human is a reflection of the values and the ideas and the culture of the humans that created it in the first place. It doesn't matter if it's AI or it's a toaster. And so the people that are building these things, what's important to them? What mission are they on? And I think that comes back to your talent question earlier. If, as a company, we're now all more transparent than we've ever been before. Everybody can see what you're up to, what you're doing, why you're doing it. You have to explain yourself on Twitter, right? And I think that's profound, and it's a great opportunity for companies that are doing important work because it's going to bring other people who have a similar mission to make things happen for the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to your company culture and company ethics as well. Yeah. And so some of it is not a technology problem. It's more of what is the human approach to this? Yeah.
Google has their AI principles for better or worse, right?
But and one of the things that we are always on top of, and it's not fully encompassing, is privacy. Yeah. As you think, and that factors really strongly. So, and for instance, our legal team wrote up a privacy policy that regular humans can't read. So we turned around and said, okay, there are 5 privacy principles that we're going to put forth and we're going to live by, and we make sure all the engineers understand that. So as we're developing internally, that we're also adhering to those principles even before an experiment actually hits an A/B test with the consumer.
I think there's among mass consumers globally, there's a fear of the unknown. People they know their data can be used in bad ways, but most people, I think, are really trying to use it in good ways. And I think there's one challenge we will face in kind of the 10 years of where will AI, machine learning go is people need to, the mass consumer who doesn't have a master's in software development or something has to understand how this stuff works. Yeah. And we, the users and proliferators of this technology, need to educate consumers and be very transparent with them on what we need from you, how this will work, and how we're trying to solve your need, improve your experience, benefit you. But I think there's a large consumer education that'll have to happen over many years before we get kind of that broad adoption and acceptance, because right now it's just too unknown and it's far too technical. Yeah.
Well, there's going to be 2 more questions from me, then we'll open it up to the audience to engage with this great panel. But you mentioned 10 years out. I'd love to hear your thoughts, looking forward, taking the long view. 10 years out, what do you see in AI? How's that going to impact your investments, your products, your services? What's on the forefront? What's coming?
Well, my view, and I saw some statistic that said 40% of jobs are going to be impacted by AI, whatever that means. I'm actually excited about that prospect. Think about 40% of people being freed up to do what is really meaningful to them, to go pursue their interest, their passion, their life mission. For me, AI is just an enabler. It's just a tool. Where is it going? It's going where humans want it to go. If people are doing nefarious things with data and AI, then the government should make it illegal and put those people in jail. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Peter was talking about that earlier. But trying to engineer the right and wrong into products and dictate to companies what they should or shouldn't do with AI, I think it's just a terribly slippery slope. And I don't know that it unleashes the opportunity. Just look at China. I mean, they have a national strategy to be the global leader in AI. They don't have any privacy rules. Now, I'm not saying we to go there, but what I'm saying is, think about that, right? They're thinking the opportunity for AI is much larger than kind of trying to go in and dictate to people exactly what they should or shouldn't do with data. I think we should look at the opportunity and unleash American innovation against the opportunity, and then we should watch. And if people do things that are bad, then we should introduce new regulation to prevent that from happening going forward. And then maybe, if they do something really bad, put them in jail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And to me, it's more so not jumping ahead to 10 years, but what is the incremental changes that we're going to see as we move toward those 10 years? I do have an inside view into robotics and where that's driving and the ability to see where that may move. So one of the things I'm really excited about, we just introduced a lawnmower. And 2 years ago, I was at our chief operating officer's house with our families, and it was one of the early versions of it. And we were just sitting talking, and while the robot was going, our kids were playing and whatnot. And one of the things that really struck me was that it was just quiet. So I don't know how many people here live in the suburbs, and on the weekends you just hear this noise.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
If this is successful, that goes away.
Yeah.
And as that starts to move in, and it's okay, this is how life will start to change. And yeah, noise pollution will go down. You'll have this robot that'll go while you're sleeping every other day, and it just takes a slight hair off the top. And will be intelligent too. So it'll be plugged into weather and whatnot to be able to forecast. And then from there, your home and your lawn are just sort of clean and done.
Yeah.
And like those types of things are really exciting.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I think when I look out 10 years, I look at expensive places, not just in investments. We always think investments are too expensive to drive the price down, but I think AI will offer consumers lower prices across a variety of industries.
Yeah.
It'll create automation, but it'll also create the ability to know what you want, when you want, and remove a ton of friction from the buyer process and create tremendous transparency in the buyer process across all industries.
That makes sense. All right, final question before we go to the audience. What advice would you give either enterprise or entrepreneurs out there sitting there thinking, geez, I want to grow my business using AI? What's your advice? What's your counsel to those folks?
Real simple. People say AI is overhyped. It's not. AI is going to change everything, and if you're not doing something in AI, get started. You'll regret it.
Just
3-4 years if you haven't at least started doing something. Those skill sets, that expertise, that know-how, bringing that new electricity into your solutions, your services, whatever they may be, that's the source of competitive advantage in the future. Don't wait another minute.
Yeah. Coming back to the same thing, I think all of us have said a couple times, focus on the problem you're trying to solve. Make sure that's meaningful. And then AI is a tool in that toolkit to be able to do that.
I would echo that. Start right now. Don't wait another minute.
Okay. All right. Do we have a mic out there? Or not a mic? Or?
Hi, I'm Debjwani. And my first question to you is, because I'm a blockchain expert, so my question is towards blockchain. So what are the use cases? So here, what are the use cases that you find where both AI and blockchain can coexist, which are high in terms of feasibility and impact? Thank you.
We actually have a solution that we're working on right now, which combines AI and blockchain. We think it's at least 10 times better than the status quo alternative, and we call it the unstoppable audit. And basically the way it works is if you have a secure vault or a pharmacy or a data center and you want to know who went in there, maybe your office building. The problem with the badge ID cards is people can come in after you. You swipe the card, someone else goes in right behind you, you hold the door open, and an unaudited person enters. There's no way to stop that without placing human guard at every entryway, which we can't do. So what we do is we apply facial recognition, human pose estimation, object detection to identify exactly who came in. And if we don't know who it is, we still have a record of them. And then we hash the entire audit trail and put it into the blockchain. So you have an unalterable audit that can be verified by any one of your partners at any time and still preserves all of the data privacy of those individuals and who was there.
Any other questions?
Nothing?
Oh, right here.
Yeah, I'm Steve Gaines. I forget who made the point, but the point about putting people in jail if you break the rules and so forth around using AI and so forth. Our government has shown a thorough lack of understanding of this over the last couple of months. How does the industry, what's the right way for the industry to be working with the government to help them understand what should be regulated and how it should be regulated?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll just jump into this one here. Given the senatorial hearings, like when they were interviewing Mark Zuckerberg, it was, to me, there was a definite lack of understanding of the capabilities of the technologies by our government officials. And with that, the answer to that is utilize democracy, and we need to vote and make sure that people have an understanding that we vote into office. And while we're doing that, there needs to be some sort of ethical capability that we're seeing coming out of corporations today to help drive this as well. So there is this dual responsibility with ethics on the corporate side and on the government side. And I think there is an education component for probably those of us in this room that we need to help other people understand what the impact of these technologies actually are.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think education is key. I spend a lot of time with a variety of different regulators on an ongoing basis in my team, explaining to them what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. And I think those of us trying to be more at the forefront of this bear the responsibility to bring them along. I haven't yet met I don't meet with a lot of politicians, but I haven't yet met a regulator who doesn't see the value of this and know it's happening, but need help understanding it. It's not the number one priority they have. And so they appreciate what we're doing and want to learn, but we need to bring the resources to them to help them learn.
And I think it's a terribly important question. There's certainly a role for the government in all this. But what I would say is each one of you, when you have an opportunity to speak to your representative or your senator or congressperson, tell them to get moving, right? I mean, this is not something the United States needs to be waiting on. We need to take a leadership role. And I think, we could see what the Chinese are doing. We could see, what Vladimir Putin has said about the value of AI to them. We have to wake up and realize this is absolutely central. It's critical. And, we don't need a Pearl Harbor moment to gear into action. We need to move now. I know that's harder to do than to say, but it happens with each one of us saying, hey, this is something critically important.
Mm-hmm.
Another?
Right here, I've got one.
Yeah, a question for Mike. When do we see the iRobot that's a driverless lawnmower?
It was announced in January, I believe, and the initial deployment's going to be in Germany this spring. So there's information about it, and then consumer in the U.S., I believe, next year as well. So as we start to roll this out, usually we'll roll out a robot, say, in the Japan market first. This is going to be the German market, and then we'll start to push it out from there. The interesting thing about this that we need to ensure that operates is that it approaches lawn mowing slightly differently. There's not a massive blade, there's smaller blades. So as we put these into market here, there is a safety component that we need to make sure that we have in place, and we've done a lot of work around this. And the other neat thing is that you don't have to bury wires, so it's basically off of beacons. So as you'll see more information in the press about the German experience, it should hit the US market in the following spring.
Well, guys, I can see by our timer we are out of time, unfortunately. But first of all, Kevin, Mike, Matthias, thank you so much for your great thoughts. Thank you, the audience. Thanks, Vanguard, for the sponsorship. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you very much.